So in consideration of time, you wonder, could the future affect the past? I mean, that sounds very strange in our traditional logic sense, right? Where the way we tend to think of causality or how things get caused is from a beginning moving forward. People like Stephen Hawking argues that we may live in an 11-dimensional supermembrane. How he explores that is through the model of physics. And in my view, at least, physics tends to level things out to sort of the lowest level, to this sort of frisky dirt that the physicist says that we are. We're just a frisky dirt that somehow got up and started to walk around. But the way I like to look at this is that, from a real evolutionary perspective, I think, and this is not really that radical in my opinion, we are the embodiment of that evolution. We have the intelligence of all those different minds in us, sort of, and they're acting in how we react. And so we are an integral being of that evolutionary process, with all of those intelligences included in unique ways, and the degree to which we feel into that whole evolutionary process is the degree to which we're expressing those intelligences. Einstein says, or the one person asked, how are you so smart, Einstein? And he says, I think with my body. And in my opinion, that is sort of the openness to those intelligences, arguably, And there really is, a lot of study required and so forth. Because in another way, if you're going to include our culture, which is, again, we have the potentialities of all of that in our body, brain, mind, and you're having to go back into those cultural experiences, sort of, and try to enact them through your body. So hold this idea for a moment, that, there's these other sort of energies that are there moment to moment. And again, this doesn't, I think, necessarily contradict the going model of physics, but, it would be like there's a number of cells, a number of you, operating at these different dimensional levels, and then they're feeding back on you, and their expression or experience of time would be different from ours. And in actuality, you are that, but in a different sort of time space. And so it's feeding back and having an effect on the kinds of actions that you do, at least to some degree. And so there's this weird feedback. Of course, you are an enacting model, so you have some degree of freedom going forward, but it's also a reverse causality going the other way, sort of in the future back on you, to affect the kinds of directions you will go in the present. So there's this place of friction at the center that you kind of are the embodiment of, and you have these dual causal relations coming at you in both ways. It's again strange to think of that in our traditional physics model, but it's not so strange in another sense, I don't think. Just our minds aren't really geared that way, perhaps.